Hi, I'm Owen2, author of the book The Charismatic Edge and creator of the online Charisma Training Academy. And welcome to another free video on the 5 fundamentals of influence. In this particular video, I want to focus on the language of influence. In other words, what are the words that you need to use that will allow you to be much more persuasive, much more influential. Now, I've been lucky enough to train in many different countries and across more than 22 different countries with lots of different languages. One of the things that people are always surprised at is despite the languages that I'm translated into, the language of influence stays constant regardless. What I mean by that is it doesn't matter what language you speak, it doesn't matter what language you communicate in. The language of influence is nothing to do with the particular vocabulary, but it's all to do with the way in which you structure language in order to build the right response potential in the people that you talk to. So what we want to look at in this particular video is I want to share with you some insights on some of the language you can use that will allow you and enable you to be much more likely to get results. This is whether or not you're trying to write an email that you want to get a good response from, whether or not you're trying to present your website with some really, really good copywriting, whether you're trying to be able to communicate on a video or even as a presentation to people in a way that makes them remember what it is that you say. Even if you want to be able to convince people to, again, go out with you or convince people to be able to hang out with you or convince people to be able to do what it is that you want them to do. What are the ways that you can use language in particular to be able to get the kind of results, to be able to be much more likely to get the word yes said when you say it? So again, the language of influence starts off with understanding how language works. And the reality is that in our mind, we don't tend to process all of language in a very conscious, logical, deliberate way. Most of the time, we automatically take things in quite quickly. We allow our brains just to take information in, and we don't necessarily pay attention to every single word. What this means is that our brain often takes shortcuts. In other words, we tend to start to just listen to people talk, and we tend to just get the meaning. But we don't really analyze whether or not they're presenting a message in a powerful way. So when you do use language, you're not necessarily just using language in a way that everyone's going to analyze every single word. Instead, every single time you do use a sentence or use a phrase, you're much more likely to actually impact people if you phrase it in ways that is designed, psychologically speaking, to influence them at a more unconscious level. What we mean by this is if, for example, I give you 2 options, and say, for example, both options are the same. If I phrase them differently and I'm communicating with you and talking to you about the different options, because I use, for example, the word or, automatically your mind, consciously you think to yourself, oh, I've got 2 options, even if I don't necessarily give you 2 options. But you're much more likely to then want to decide on one of those 2 options. The key is both options work for me. For example, if I say, do you want to pay by cash or by credit card? Now, by that question, automatically you'll think to yourself, okay, I prefer to pay by cash, or a credit card would be easier. But you don't even question the fact that you want to pay. Or if you're working with your children and you say, will you brush your teeth now or before you go to bed? So you give them 2 options. And because this is all part of the particular dialogue, part of the particular conversation, they're much less likely to go, oh, well, that's not giving me an option. Their unconscious will take in a lot of the information, therefore they won't be able to consciously analyze it, therefore they won't be able to unpack it. Now, obviously this doesn't work in all sorts of cases, but it does work in many cases, and most of the cases that you need to be more persuasive. If you say, I'm not sure if you'll think this is really, really great or if you think it's totally amazing, but regardless of what you think, I do think that you should spend some time making the best decision for you. Presuppositions are some of the most powerful forms of language you can use to be able to influence people. Instead of saying something is true, you assume it's true in the language. So instead of me saying this is, this is easy to learn, I'm saying, I'm not sure if you think this is easy or simple to learn, but regardless, let's see what we can do. By presupposing or assuming it's simple or easy, automatically I'm making that a much more powerful statement, which is much more likely to go into your mind. So again, presuppositions are incredibly powerful. Now, I don't have the opportunity to go too much in depth on presuppositions, but even if you just remember the or presupposition, giving people 2 options and both of them leading down the same road, you'll find yourself in a much more effective position to be able to get the right kinds of results. Also, another word that is particularly powerful is the word but. And I want to talk to you about a few different dimensions of but. Some people say, don't use the word but. They say, but is a very bad word to use. But the reality is that whenever you do use the word but, automatically you're directing people's attention. And sometimes but is a really useful way of going. For example, if someone is saying a lot of negative things and you say, that's true, but you're able to redirect their brain to something more positive. In particular, if you're talking to, say, for example, you're selling Say you're selling a house and the person is saying, thinking to themselves, this is quite expensive. And you want to be able to overcome that objection. But is a great way of being able to overcome objections. So you know that that's what they're thinking. They haven't said it, so you're not going to create an argument with them. So you say instead yourself, before they get the chance to, you say, I know some people think that this is quite costly, but when people realize just how wonderful a life that they have and how much they save on transport and how great it is for their children, they realize that the investment is so much worth it. So immediately, by using the word but, you take what they're thinking already, and then you use the word but to cancel it out and focus on what it is that you want them to think about instead. Now, you have to be careful with this because it's important that you do this when you're communicating with people before they've brought up the objection themselves. Because if they do bring up the objections themselves and then you do what I've just done, then it sounds like you're dismissing it. It sounds like you're arguing with them. This is what we know is the yes, but phenomenon. So it means if you ever say something to somebody and they say yes, but, even if they agree with you 99%, it automatically feels to you as if they're totally disagreeing. Because as soon as they say but, people become defensive. The key is to understand that when you're communicating with someone, another aspect of using but is, if they communicate with you on an idea and you want to share one slight disagreement, but you in principle agree with most, change the word but to and. And when you do it, you'll keep their mind open, they'll keep listening to you, and you'll be able to make your point in a much more powerful way. So again, the word but isn't just about you using it to be able to stay positive. Sometimes you'll use it, sometimes you won't. But the word but tends to take attention away from what came before it and focus attention to what comes after it. And that's really, really useful for you to know. Another important piece of information, another important understanding or insight into language is to be able to understand the importance of the word yet. The word yet is something that a lot of people do whenever they're talking about, limitations that they have that they'll overcome. And immediately when you say the word yet, it implies that it's going to happen at some point in the future, or at least it's possible that it's going to happen at some point in the future. So when someone says to you, I'm not going to be able to do it, and you want to be able to open up their way of thinking so that you can persuade them that it might be possible, you can add the word yet to it. So I don't think this is possible, and you can say yet. When you add the word yet to it, it makes them much less likely to think to themselves, well, this is something that will never get done. In other words, it's making an impossibility into a possibility. The word yet has really, really magical ingredients and a magical ability to be able to do just that. The other thing you have to think about is being able to rephrase certain words and reframe the way you structure something in the language that you use to make people much more likely to actually decide that they're going to go down that particular area. For example, when you're describing something, the more vivid you can use language, the more you can give people an experience rather than just a description, the more likely they are to be able to get results. So for example, if I wanted to sell to you a car, instead of me saying this car has all these specifications, or even giving you the benefits and saying this car will allow you to do X, Y, and Z, if I was to get you to imagine yourself in that car and seeing yourself driving a car, looking at this beautiful car, feeling how great it is to own this car, smelling the leather interior, being able to listen to the amazing sound system, driving down the road and seeing all these people looking at you and in dazzled amazement, thinking to themselves, my God, that's a gorgeous car. He's so, so successful. Or she's so, so successful. By you imagining that vividly, it makes you much more likely to actually get excited about what is it that I'm telling you about, or what is it that I'm trying to sell to you, that particular idea. By describing things in vivid details, by using language which gets people's senses activated, you're much more likely to get them to want to actually go with you, to want to say yes, to want to agree with you in that particular moment. So again, these are just some insights into using the language of influence in such a way that you're much more likely to get people on side, to get people's buy-in, to get people to say yes. So I can't go into too much detail on this because again, there's so much in the language of influence, but I will be covering it at a very, very special seminar. For now, I really hope that the language of influence, this particular video, provided you with some really, really good value. Again, in summary, we looked at the importance of the word or as what we call a presupposition, where you give people two options, but either option still works for you. So I hope you found that particular tip useful or really, really effective. Second of all, we looked at the importance of the word but not just as in saying, you need to avoid but or you need to use but really saying sometimes you do need to use but whenever you want to cancel out what you've just said and focus on your attention on something else. But whenever you're communicating with someone and you want to keep rapport with that person, Instead of disagreeing with them and say yes but, you could say yes and still disagree, but they're much more likely to actually listen to you, pay attention. We looked at the word yet, which allows you to turn any impossibility into a possibility. So when someone says, I can't do it, you can respond, well, yet. And that automatically gets them thinking a lot more openly and a lot more full of possibility than ever before. And by doing so, it allows you to actually change their mindset, change the way in which they think about their own limitations in such a way that it's much more likely to get you to make the right choices or get them to make the right choices about what they can do. And then lastly, your ability to be able to persuade people by being able to be more descriptive, using sense words, being able to describe things more vividly so that they can see things happening, hear things happening, and feel things happening. And you can give them the experience, not just telling them the features, not just the benefits, the experience, which makes them far more likely to really activate their senses, activate their feelings, and makes it more likely that they're excited and they're going to make the best decision possible. So again, lots more we could do on influence. Sorry, on the language of influence. Sorry I can't do it all right now, but I really hope what I have given you is of benefit to you. Again, enjoy the next couple of free videos. Really hope you're enjoying the video series. Please leave us lots of feedback and let us know how you're getting on with these videos. For now, I'm Owen Fitzpatrick. Thanks very much for watching.